Alex had always loved the forest. As a child, he would often escape the city's chaos, finding peace in the quiet embrace of nature. The forest was a place where time seemed to slow down, where the worries of the world faded into the distant hum of the trees and the rustling leaves. After years of living in the fast-paced city, the noise, and the endless deadlines, Alex decided it was time to return to that place. The cabin he had built in the forest as a young man was still there, tucked away from the world, and it called to him like a long-lost friend. The drive back was a long one, stretching for hours along winding roads. As Alex drove, he thought about how much had changed since the last time he was here. The world outside was so different now. People were busier, more connected, but somehow more alone. But here in the forest things were simpler. The trees stood as silent witnesses to the passage of time, unchanged, constant, and reliable. When Alex finally arrived, he took a deep breath. The familiar scent of pine trees and earth filled the air, and for the first time in years he felt at peace. His cabin was just as he remembered it, small, weathered, and tucked between the trees. The once vibrant wooden exterior had faded, and the roof had gathered a layer of moss, but it was still home. The windows were covered with dust, the door creaked when he pushed it open, and the air inside was stale with disuse. But to Alex, it felt like stepping into a memory, a time when things were simpler and quieter. He unpacked his bags and began settling in. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm orange glow over the trees, and Alex decided to take a walk around the property to stretch his legs. The forest was quiet, almost too quiet. There was no sound of birds, no rustle of small animals in the underbrush. It felt different somehow, like the forest was holding its breath. As he walked along the familiar path that led deeper into the woods, Alex noticed something odd. There were footprints in the soft earth, large, unfamiliar footprints. At first he thought they might belong to a bear or some other large animal, but the shape was wrong. The prints were too clean, too distinct, with a strange, angular shape. He crouched down, inspecting them closely. Something about them made him uneasy, but he shrugged it off. It was probably just some animal, maybe even a person. After all, the forest was not as secluded as it used to be. Still, the feeling of being watched lingered. Alex stood up and glanced around, but there was nothing. No movement, no sounds. He shook his head and continued on, telling himself it was nothing to worry about. The forest had a way of playing tricks on your mind, especially when you were alone for too long. When he returned to the cabin, the unease was still there, lingering in the back of his mind. He decided to start a fire in the fireplace and settle in for the night. As the flames crackled and danced, the warmth of the fire helped soothe his nerves, but the silence in the cabin seemed even louder in the absence of the usual sounds of life outside. It wasn't until the next morning that Alex discovered something truly strange. He had planned to spend the day chopping wood, cleaning up around the cabin, and perhaps going into town for supplies. But when he stepped outside, he was greeted with an unexpected sight. The area around his cabin was not as he had left it. There were strange, almost unnatural markings on the trees near the edge of the clearing, symbols carved into the bark. They were intricate, detailed, and foreign to him. It was clear that someone or something had been here. Alex's first thought was that it was just some prank, maybe some teenagers messing around in the woods. But as he examined the symbols more closely, he began to feel a sense of dread. The markings weren't random. They were deliberate, purposeful, and that made him uneasy. He glanced around the forest, but everything seemed still, as though the trees themselves were holding their breath. As the day wore on, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He decided to take a walk through the woods to clear his mind, hoping that the familiar sights of nature would help him feel more grounded. He walked deeper into the forest, following the old trail he used to take when he was younger. The trees grew thicker here, the canopy of leaves overhead blocking out much of the light, leaving the forest floor in a cool, dim shade. It was then that he saw it. A flash of metal caught his eye, and Alex froze. Just ahead, partially hidden behind the dense trees, was something that didn't belong. A small, sleek craft, partially buried in the undergrowth. It was unlike anything Alex had ever seen before. The metal gleamed dark and smooth, with strange angular shapes that gave it an almost alien appearance. It was a ship, or at least it looked like one. Alex's heart pounded in his chest as he approached cautiously, his steps slow and deliberate. The ship was clearly damaged, with dents and scorch marks on the surface. It was as though it had crashed. He knelt down beside it, inspecting the craft carefully, his fingers brushing against the cold metal. The ship was unlike anything human technology could produce, and the realization sent a chill down his spine. This was no ordinary aircraft. It was from somewhere far beyond Earth. He felt a strange pull, an instinct to investigate further. He circled the ship, searching for a way inside when he heard something, a soft sound almost like a whisper. It came from inside the craft, faint but unmistakable. He leaned in closer, his breath catching in his throat. The whisper came again, this time louder, and Alex's pulse quickened. It was a voice. Without thinking, he pushed open a panel on the side of the ship, revealing a small, dimly lit interior. Inside, lying on the floor, was a figure, a woman. She was unlike anyone Alex had ever seen. Her skin was a soft shade of silver, glowing faintly in the low light. Her features were delicate, almost otherworldly, with pointed ears and large, expressive eyes that shimmered like stars. Alex's first instinct was to run, but something held him in place. He couldn't leave her there, stranded and hurt. Despite the fear coursing through him, he crouched beside the woman, reaching out to check for a pulse. She was alive, but barely. "Hey," Alex whispered, his voice shaking. "Are you okay?" The woman's eyes fluttered open, and she looked up at him with confusion and fear. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Instead, she pointed weakly toward the controls of the ship. It was clear she needed help. Alex knew his life would never be the same. He had stumbled upon something extraordinary, something he couldn't explain. As the woman gazed up at him, he realized that whatever this was, it had brought him face to face with the unknown. Alex carefully helped the alien woman out of the ship. Her body was frail, and she swayed slightly as she stood, struggling to keep her balance. He didn't know what to do, but instinct told him to take her back to his cabin. He had to help her. He couldn't leave her here alone, in a crashed ship in the middle of the forest. The alien woman barely spoke, her words coming out in soft whispers that Alex couldn't understand. Her language was completely foreign to him, and her eyes, glowing faintly in the dim light, seemed to be searching for something, something she couldn't find. It was then that Alex realized just how deep the mystery of this encounter went. When they reached the cabin, Alex laid her gently on the couch, wrapping her in a warm blanket. She seemed tired, weak, but her eyes never left him, watching him with an intensity that felt almost unearthly. Alex felt like she could see through him, like she knew things about him that no one should. For a moment, the silence in the room was overwhelming. The fire crackled in the fireplace, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Alex sat across from her, unsure of what to say or do next. She was not like anything he had ever seen before. Her skin, silver and smooth, glowed faintly in the light. Her long, dark hair shimmered as if it held some sort of cosmic energy. Her eyes, large and otherworldly, stared back at him, filled with curiosity and something deeper, a sadness perhaps. Alex ran his hand through his hair, still processing everything that had happened. He had found her, this being from another world, another galaxy. He had brought her into his home. What now? The woman's lips parted slightly and Alex froze. Was she going to speak? For a moment, he thought he saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes, like she was trying to understand something important. But then she simply closed her eyes and let out a soft sigh, as if exhausted. Alex sat in silence for a while, watching her, waiting for something to happen. He felt an overwhelming urge to communicate with her, to understand who she was, where she came from, and what had happened to her. But the language barrier was too great, and she wasn't speaking. As the day passed, Alex decided to leave her to rest and went outside to gather firewood. His mind raced, trying to process the incredible turn of events. The woman had crashed in his forest. She wasn't human. She wasn't from Earth. And yet she had ended up in his care. He couldn't help but wonder what her presence meant. Why was she here? What did she want? When he returned to the cabin, he found the woman sitting up, staring at the fire. Her eyes seemed to follow the dancing flames as if entranced by them. She turned to look at him as he entered, her gaze intense. She wasn't speaking, but it felt as if she was trying to communicate with him in some way. Her eyes, her expressions, her gestures all conveyed something. It was as if they were sharing an understanding, an unspoken connection. Alex set down the firewood and sat beside her. He wasn't sure what he expected, but he felt that there was something important between them, something beyond just a chance encounter. She seemed to be reaching out to him, even if she couldn't do it with words. "Can you understand me?" Alex asked softly, his voice hesitant. She blinked, then nodded once slowly. Alex felt a small rush of hope. Maybe there was a way to communicate after all. I'm Alex," he said. "I don't know who you are, but I'll help you. I can get you out of here, or at least try to. Do you understand?" Her eyes flickered, and for a moment Alex thought she might respond, but instead she simply reached out her hand, her fingers brushing his. Her touch was light, almost like a whisper on his skin. Alex froze, a strange warmth spreading through him. It was as if her touch held a kind of power, a kind of energy that was beyond human understanding. He could feel it, could almost hear it, like a hum beneath his skin. She looked at him, her eyes filled with a quiet intensity. Alex's heart raced, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he found himself leaning closer to her, as if drawn by some invisible force. The moment passed, and she withdrew her hand, her eyes never leaving his. She didn't speak, but her expression seemed to say everything. She didn't need words. Somehow, they were communicating in a way that Alex couldn't explain. The days that followed were strange. The alien woman, whom Alex had begun to call Lyra, was quiet, but her presence was overwhelming. She didn't eat much, and when she did, it was always something simple like fruit or water. It was clear she didn't need much to survive. Her gaze remained constant, always on him, always watching, as if studying him, as if searching for something in him. There was a strange familiarity in the way she looked at him, as if she already knew him, even though they had just met. Alex tried to ask her questions, but all she did was gaze at him silently, her expression unreadable. It was like she was waiting for something, waiting for the right moment to speak, to reveal the truth. But what truth? Alex couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her than met the eye. One evening, as the sun set and the fire crackled softly in the hearth, Lyra stood up suddenly. Alex watched as she moved gracefully to the window, her movements fluid and effortless. She stood there for a moment, staring out into the forest as if lost in thought. "Lyra," Alex said, his voice soft. "What happened to you? Where did you come from?" She turned to face him, her eyes filled with something that Alex couldn't quite place: fear, sadness, longing. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Instead, she closed her eyes as if deep in concentration. Suddenly, Alex felt a strange sensation wash over him, like a wave of warmth and cold at the same time. His mind was filled with images, flashes of distant stars, strange planets, and vast cities made of light and metal. He saw battles, alien ships, crashing through the sky, explosions lighting up the night. He saw her, Lyra, standing alone, surrounded by chaos. Then, just as quickly as the images had come, they vanished, leaving Alex breathless. He blinked, trying to clear the confusion in his mind. His heart raced, and he looked at Lyra, whose eyes were now closed. I saw something," Alex whispered, his voice trembling. What was that? Lyra opened her eyes slowly and nodded, as if confirming what had just happened. She didn't speak, but her gaze seemed to say that she had just shared something important, something that Alex needed to understand. For the first time, Alex felt that the truth was close, that the answers he sought were within reach. But what did it mean? What was she trying to tell him? As the night deepened and the fire flickered low, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that his life had changed forever. Lyra wasn't just a stranger, a lost traveler from another world. She was something more, something important. And whatever it was, Alex knew that it was only the beginning. The days passed in a strange, silent rhythm. Lyra and Alex barely spoke, but their connection deepened in ways that neither of them fully understood. She continued to stay in the cabin, watching Alex with those deep, shimmering eyes. Every now and then, Alex would catch her gazing at him as if trying to convey something without words. Her presence was constant, and though she didn't speak, her unspoken communication left Alex constantly wondering about the truth she held. Alex couldn't ignore the events that had already unfolded: the crash, the mysterious markings in the forest, the flash of alien technology. Every time he tried to convince himself that he was just helping someone in need, the truth became clearer. Lyra wasn't just stranded, she was part of something much larger than him. One evening, as the sun began to set behind the trees, Alex returned from gathering firewood. He opened the door to the cabin, expecting the usual quiet greeting, but something felt different. The air inside was charged, as if Lyra was on the verge of revealing something important. She stood by the window, looking out at the forest, her back to him. He felt an odd sense of urgency, like the world around him was about to shift. "Lyra," Alex said, his voice tentative. "What happened to you? You've shown me things, but I need to know more. I can't keep wondering." She turned slowly, her eyes meeting his. There was a sadness in her gaze, an almost unbearable weight. She seemed to hesitate for a moment, as if weighing whether to speak, before finally nodding. She didn't say anything, but Alex noticed her lips tremble slightly. Without a word, she walked to a small, makeshift table near the corner of the room. She reached for a thin, metallic object that had been resting there, something Alex hadn't noticed before. It was about the size of a book, with intricate designs on the surface that looked like a blend of symbols and patterns Alex couldn't recognize. Lyra held it carefully, like it was precious to her, and then slowly approached Alex. She extended the object to him, and as their hands touched, Alex felt a surge of energy. The object hummed softly in his palm as if alive. It was warm, almost uncomfortably so, and he felt his thoughts becoming clearer, sharper. Lyra stepped back, her eyes studying him, waiting. Alex stared down at the object in his hand. It was like nothing he had ever seen, so foreign yet so familiar. There was a strange connection between him and the object, one that seemed to transcend language. With a deep breath, Lyra finally spoke. Her voice was soft, but there was a strength to it that made Alex pause. "I am not from your world," she said, the words heavy with meaning. "I was sent here to scout, to observe, but something went wrong." Alex's heart raced. "What went wrong?" he asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Lyra looked down as if remembering something painful. "My people, my civilization. We were destroyed by a force far beyond our control. We were a peaceful race once. We lived in harmony with the stars, traveling from one world to the next, learning, exploring. But then another race came. They were conquerors, ruthless and cold. They sought to take everything from us, our knowledge, our worlds, our very existence." Alex was silent, captivated by her words. It was hard to imagine that someone like Lyra had been part of such a conflict. She didn't look like a warrior, and yet the sorrow in her eyes told a different story. "We tried to fight back," she continued, her voice quiet but firm. "But they were too powerful, too many. Our fleet was destroyed. The few of us who survived scattered across the galaxy, searching for a way to rebuild. I was one of those survivors." She paused, and Alex could see the pain in her expression. He wanted to say something to comfort her, but he didn't know how. Instead, he simply nodded, urging her to continue. "I was sent to Earth," Lyra said, her voice growing stronger. "Not because it was our last hope, but because I was tasked with finding an ally, someone who could help us fight back, someone who could stand against the empire that destroyed everything." Alex blinked, trying to process what she was saying. "You came here to find an ally. But why me? Why Earth?" Lyra's gaze met his again, and for the first time Alex saw something else in her eyes, something like hope. "I believe that humans have the strength to resist. Your species. You are unlike any other I've encountered. You fight for what you believe in. You survive against all odds. I came here because I thought you might be the key to saving us." Alex took a step back, his mind spinning. He had thought this was all some strange accident, some encounter that was beyond his control. But now, Lyra was telling him that there was more at stake than just helping a stranded alien woman. The fate of entire civilizations, perhaps even the entire galaxy, was in his hands. He looked down at the object in his palm, the strange metallic device that had somehow connected him to Lyra's story. The hum of energy from the device was still present, but now it felt different. It wasn't just alien technology, it was a bridge, a connection between two worlds. "How can I help?" Alex asked, his voice a whisper. He wasn't sure he was ready to take on such a huge responsibility, but he knew one thing for certain: he couldn't turn his back on her. Lyra's face softened, a mixture of relief and gratitude in her expression. "I need to fix my ship," she said. "But more than that, I need to stop them. The empire that destroyed my people is still out there. They won't stop until they've taken everything. We can't let them do that." Alex nodded, the weight of her words settling in his chest. He didn't know what he could do, but he knew that whatever it was, it had to start here, with Lyra, in this cabin in the forest. The next few days were spent in a flurry of activity. Lyra shared what little knowledge she had about the enemy's technology, what remained of it, and together, they began to piece together the plans to repair her ship. The materials she needed were rare, almost impossible to find on Earth. But Lyra had a sense of where to look, and Alex was willing to help her, no matter the cost. As they worked side by side, the bond between them grew stronger. Lyra's strength, both physical and mental, became clearer every day. She was resourceful, sharp, and determined. Yet beneath that strength, Alex could see the traces of her loss, her longing for a time when things were simpler, when her people were safe. On the fourth day, as they were preparing to venture deeper into the forest to find the rare minerals Lyra needed, something unexpected happened. Alex was walking to the cabin when he noticed strange lights in the sky, pulsing, moving across the horizon. His heart skipped a beat. The lights weren't like any plane he had ever seen. They were too fast, too erratic, and then they vanished. He turned to Lyra, his voice tight with fear. "What was that?" Lyra's face grew pale. She looked toward the sky, her eyes narrowing. "They've found us," she whispered. "They're coming." Alex's blood ran cold. He didn't know who they were, but he knew that Lyra's enemies had found them. The peaceful days in the forest were over. The fight for survival had begun. The moment Lyra whispered that they were coming, the air around Alex grew heavy, as if the weight of the universe had suddenly pressed down on them. He could see it in her eyes, the fear, the determination, and the strength she was struggling to hold on to. The enemy, whoever they were, had found them, and now it was a race against time. Alex had never imagined his quiet life in the forest would become the setting for something so extraordinary, so dangerous. But here he was, standing beside Lyra, the alien woman he had taken in, the woman who was no longer just a stranger but someone he had come to care about deeply. They were up against forces far beyond anything he had ever faced. Lyra grabbed his arm, her grip firm but desperate. "We have to move," she said. "I can't stay here, we can't stay here." The panic in her voice was something Alex had never heard before. Lyra was always calm, always controlled. But now there was a vulnerability to her, an awareness that this was no longer just a matter of survival. It was a matter of life and death. Alex didn't hesitate. He grabbed his jacket, checking the door to make sure it was secure, and then turned to Lyra. "Where do we go?" "What do we do?" Lyra's eyes darted around the room. "There's a place hidden in the mountains. It's a safe house, a place where we can hide, where I can try to make contact with the rest of my people. But we have to move quickly. They'll be here soon." Without wasting another moment, Alex and Lyra rushed out of the cabin. The forest around them felt strangely quiet now, like the entire world was holding its breath. Every shadow seemed to loom larger. Every rustle of the trees sent a chill through Alex's spine. It was as if the very trees were aware of the danger that was approaching. As they moved deeper into the woods, Alex could feel the tension building. Lyra walked beside him, her pace steady, but there was an urgency in her every step. She was looking around constantly, her eyes scanning the surroundings as if she expected something to jump out of the shadows at any moment. They walked for what felt like hours, the thick trees towering above them, blocking out most of the light. Alex's legs were beginning to ache, but he didn't dare stop. He could sense that Lyra was just as determined as he was to get to the safe house, to put distance between them and whatever was coming. Suddenly, Lyra stopped in her tracks and Alex followed her gaze. Far in the distance, above the treetops, he saw them, lights, bright, flashing lights moving swiftly across the sky, growing closer by the second. "They've spotted us," Lyra said quietly, her voice filled with fear. "They've found us." Alex looked around, his heart racing. "What do we do?" Lyra's hand shot out and she grabbed him by the arm. "Run," she said simply. "We don't have time to fight them. We have to make it to the safe house. Now." Without waiting for another word, she took off, her feet moving swiftly over the forest floor, her pace faster than Alex had ever seen. Alex didn't think twice. He followed her, his legs pumping, his breath coming in quick, sharp gasps. Every sound behind them made his heart skip a beat. He could feel the presence of something terrible, something relentless, following them through the forest. The lights in the sky grew brighter, and Alex knew that they were closing in. He had no idea what kind of technology they had, but the sheer speed with which they moved made him certain that it was something far beyond anything humans had ever developed. They reached a clearing, and Lyra slowed down. Alex came up beside her, panting, his body drenched in sweat. She turned to face him, her expression grim. "We're not going to make it to the safe house in time," Lyra said, her voice steady but filled with regret. "But there's another option. I can fight. I can buy us time." Alex's heart twisted. He could see the determination in her eyes, but he didn't want to lose her. "No," he said, shaking his head. "We'll make it. We just need more time. We'll find a way." Lyra didn't respond right away. She just stared at him as if weighing something important in her mind. Then, with a deep breath, she spoke. "The safe house is our only hope. I can't afford to waste any more time here. The enemy, they're not just searching for me. They're searching for anyone who could stop them. We have to go." Alex knew that Lyra was right. They didn't have time for hesitation. He could feel the ground vibrating underfoot as the lights drew closer, and he knew that if they didn't act now, it would be too late. "All right," Alex said, his voice firm. "We go. Lead the way." Lyra nodded once and they began to move again, their pace even faster now, as the distant lights in the sky grew larger and brighter, like a storm on the horizon. They ran for what seemed like forever, the trees and underbrush blurring around them. Alex's muscles screamed in protest, but he pushed through. He had no choice. Lyra was depending on him, and he wasn't going to let her down. Finally, they reached the edge of a cliff. The ground was rocky, and below, Alex could see the dark, winding river that flowed through the valley. It was their only way across. Lyra turned to him, her face hard with determination. "This is it," she said. "We have to jump." Alex looked at the river below. It was too far. They couldn't possibly make it. But Lyra's eyes met his, and there was something in her gaze that made him trust her. She wasn't wrong. She had faced worse. She could do this. Without another word, she leapt, her body twisting gracefully in the air as she disappeared into the night. Alex hesitated for only a second before following her, his body feeling weightless as he soared through the air and landed with a heavy splash in the cold, fast-moving water below. The current pulled at him, but he fought against it, swimming as hard as he could toward the opposite bank. He could hear the sound of the enemy's ship now, a deep, rumbling hum that sent a shiver through him. They were close, too close. Lyra was already on the shore when Alex reached her. She extended her hand, pulling him up onto solid ground, and they stumbled to their feet together. "We're not out of the woods yet," she said, her eyes scanning the sky once more. But for the first time since they had started running, Alex saw a flicker of hope in her expression. As they moved deeper into the forest, Lyra explained that the safe house was only a few miles away. But Alex didn't need to hear more. They were both too exhausted, too drained to think clearly. All that mattered was that they had made it this far. Minutes passed like hours, and just as Alex felt his strength give out, Lyra stopped and turned to him. In front of them stood a small, hidden structure tucked away in a grove of trees. It was simple, unassuming, but Alex could sense that it was more than just a shelter. It was their last hope. Lyra stepped forward, her fingers brushing the door. The sound of distant engines still echoed behind them, but Alex didn't dare look back. They had made it. Inside, Lyra activated a strange console built into the walls, and the room filled with a soft light. She turned to Alex, her eyes steady. "This is it," she said. "This is where I can send a message. This is where I can fight back." Alex nodded, understanding now that this was the beginning of something much bigger. They had outrun the enemy for now, but the battle was far from over. The war had just begun.